Good morning, crime community. I'm here to continue to read the rationale of verse. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot, 9 days old. Now, those of my readers who have never heard this poem, pronounced accordingly to the nursery conventionality, will rhyme its rhythm as obscure as an explanation note, while those who have heard it will divide it, thus declare it musical, and wonder how there can be any doubt about it. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot, 9 days old. The chief thing in the way of this species of rhythm is the necessity of which it imposes upon the poet, a traveling in constant company with his composition so as to be ready at a moment's notice to avail him of the well understood poetical license, that of reading aloud one's own doggerel. In Mr. Cranch's line, many are the thoughts that come to me. The general air of which I speak is, of course, very partially exemplified in the purpose of which, chiefly, I cite its lies yet further on our topic. The two divisions, thoughts that and come to, are ordinary Trochkis, and the last division, me, we will talk thereafter. The first division, many are the many would be thus accented by the Greek prosodies, many are the and would be called by them. The Latin books would style the foot person, the foot poem primus, and both Greek and Latin would swear that it was composed of a trochki and what they term a pyrrhic, and that is to say, a foot or two short syllables, a thing that cannot be, and I shall presently show. By now there is an obvious difficulty. The astragalagos, according to the prosodies, own showing is equal to 5 short syllables and a trochki to 3, yet in the quoted line there are 2 feet are equal. They occupy precisely the same time. In fact, the whole music of the line depends upon their being made to occupy the same time. The prosodies then have demonstrated that all mathematicians have stupidly failed in demonstrating that 3 and 5 are one and the same thing. After that, I have already said, however, about the bastard trochki and the bastard iambus, no one can have any trouble in understanding that many are the similar character. It is merely a bolder variation than usual from the routine of trochkis and introduces to the bastard trochki one additional syllable. And this syllable is not short. That is, it is not short in the sense of short as applied to the final syllable of the ordinary trochki, where the word means merely the half of long. In the case of the additional style, the short, if used at all, must be used in the sense of the sixth of long. And all of the 3 final syllables can be called short only if the same meaning, understanding of the term. The 3 together are equal only to the 1 short syllable whose place they supply of the ordinary trochki. In following that there is no sense in this, accenting 3 syllables, we must devise from them something new character which shall denote the sixth of long. Let it be the crescent placed in the curve to the left, the whole foot, many are the, might be called a quick trochki. And come now to the final division, me, of Mr. Tranch's line. It is clear that this foot, short as it appears, is fully equal in time to each of the preceding. It is, in fact, the caesura, the foot which in the beginning of this paper I call the most important in all verse. Its chief office is that of a pause or termination, and here, at the end of a line, its use is easy because there is no danger of misrepresenting its value. We pause on it by seemingly necessity just as long as it has taken us to pronounce the preceding feet, whether iambuses, trochkis, didactyls, or anapaests. It is thus a variable foot, and in some care may be well introduced into the body of a line, as in the little poem of great beauty by Mrs. Welby, I lit the step-son of only 3 years old. Here we dwell on the caesura son just as long as it requires us to pronounce either of the preceding or the succeeding iambuses. In value, therefore, in this line is that of 3 short syllables. In the following didactyl line, its value of that of the 4th short syllables, pale as a lily was Emily Gray. I have accentuated the caesura with the dotted line by way of expressing this variable of value. I observed just now that there could be no such foot of one of the 2 short syllables, that we start from in the beginning of all ideas on the topic of verse is quality, length. Thus, when we enunciate an independent syllable, it is long as a matter of course. If we enunciate two, dwelling on both equally, we express equally in the enumeration or length and have a right to call them two long syllables. If we dwell on one more than the other, we also have the right to call one short because it is the short in relation to the other. But if we dwell upon both equally and with a tripping voice, saying to ourselves, here are two short syllables, the query might well be asked of us in relation to what are they short. Shortness is but a negation of length. To say then the two syllables placed independently of another syllable are short is merely to say that they have no positive length or enunciation, and in other words, they are no syllables, but they do not exist at all. And if persisting we add anything about their equality, we are merely floundering in the idea of identical equation, where x being equal to x, nothing is shown to be equal to 0. In a word, we can form no conception of a pyrrhic as an independent foot. It is a mere chimera bred in the mad fantasy of a pendant. From what I have said about the equalization of the several feet of a line, we must not be deduced that any necessity of equality in time exists between the rhyme of several lines. A poem or even a stanza may begin with an iambisis in the first line, proceed with an anapest in the second, or even with the less accordant dactyls, as in the opening of quite a pretty specimen of verse of Miss Mary A.S. Aldrich. The wa ter lil lee steps in pride down in the depths of the azure lake. Here, azure is a spondy equivalent to a dactyl. Lake is a caesura. I shall now best proceed in quoting the initial lines of Byron's Bride of Abydos. Know ye the land where the cypress and myrtle are ambitions of deeds that are done in the clime, that the rage of the vulture and love of the turtle now melt into softness, now mad into crime. Yet know ye the land and the cedar and the vine, where the flowers ever blossom, the beams ever shine, and the light wings of Zephyr, oppressed with perfume, wax faint over the garden of Gull in her bloom, where the citron and olive have fairest of fruit, and the voice of the nightingales never is mute. Where are the virgins are soft, the roses they twine, and all save the spirit of man is divine. 'Tis the clime of the east, 'tis the land of the sun. Can the smile of such deeds as the children have done? O wild of the accents of lovers' farewell, as the hearts as they bear, and the tales that they tell. Now the flowing of these lines as times goes is very sweet and musical. They have been often admired, and justly, as times go by. That is to say, it is a rare thing to find better versification of its kind, and where verse is pleasant to the ear, it is silly to find fault with it because it refuses to be scanned. Yet I have heard men professing to be scholars who have made no scruple of abusing these lines of Byron's on the ground that they are musical in spite of all law. Other gentlemen, not scholars, abuse all law of the same reason, and it occurred neither that one party nor to the other that the law about which they are disputing might possibly be no law at all. An ass is a law in the skin of a lion. The grammar is that something about didactic lines, and it is easy seen that these lines were at least meant for didactic. The first one was therefore thus divided. Know ye the land where the cypress and the mirth. The concluding foot was a mystery, but the prosodies and something about the didactic measure, calling now and then for a double rhyme, and the court of inquiry was content to rest in the double rhyme, without exacting, perceiving that the double rhyme had to do with the question of the irregular foot. Quoting the first line, the second was thus scanned, are emblems of deeds that are done in their crimes. It was immediately seen, however, that this would not do. It was at war with the whole emphasis of the reading. It could not be supposed that Byron had any one of his senses intended to place stress upon such monosyllables as are, of, and there, nor could their climb collate with no crime in the corresponding line below, so fairly twisted into anything like a double rhyme, as so as to bring everything within the category of the grammars. But further, these grammars spoke not. The inquirers, therefore, in spite of their sense of harmony in the lines, when considered without reference to scansion, fell back upon the idea that the R was a blunder, and excess of which the poet could be sent to conventry, and striking it out, they scanned the remainder of the lines as follows: emblems of deeds that are done in their clime. They answered pretty well, and in the grammars admitted no such foot of one syllable, and besides the rhythm and didactic, in despair the books are well searched. However, in the last, the investigators are gratified by the full solution of the riddle of the profound observation quoted in the beginning of this article. When a syllable is wanting, the verse is said to be catalectic. Then the measure is exact, the line is acatalectic, but there is a redundant syllable, it forms hypermeter. This is enough. The anomalous line is pronounced by the catalytic at the head and to form the hypermeter at the tail, and so on and so on. It being soon discovered that nearly all the remaining lines are in a similar predicament, and that what flows so smoothly to the ear, although so roughly to the eye, is after all a mere jumble of catalectism, acatalectism, and hypermeter, not to say worse. Now, had this court of inquiry had been in possession of even the shadow of the philosophy of verse, they would have had no trouble in reconciling this oil and water of the eye and ear of merely scanning the passages without reference to lines, and continuously thus: know ye the land where the cypress and myrtle are, emblems of deeds that are done in there, climb where the rage of the vulture, the love of the turtle now, melt into softness now, mad into crime. Know ye the land of the cedar and vine, where the flowers ever blossom, the beams ever shine, where the light wings of cipher up press their perfume wax faint o'er the gardens of gull in her bloom, where the citron and olives are fairest of fruit, and the voice of the nightingale nine never is mute, where the virgins are soft as the roses they twine, and all save the spirit of the man is divine. 'Tis is the climate of the east, is the land of the sun. Can he smile in such deeds as this children have done? Oh, wild as the accents of lovers fair, well are the hearts and they bear, and this tale that they tell. Here crime and tell italicized are censuras, and having the value of the dactyl, 4 short syllables, while fume, wax, and twine, and the done o are spondies, which of course, being composed of 2 long syllables, are also equal to 4 short, and are the dactyl's natural equivalent. The nicety of Byron's ear has led him into a succession of feet which, with 2 trivial exceptions, as regards melody, are absolutely accurate, a very rare occurrence, this in didactic or anapestic rhythms. The exceptions are found in the spondee, twine, and the dactyl. Smile on such. Both feet are false in point of melody. In twine, and to make out the rhythm, we must force and into length it will not naturally bear. We are called into the sacrifice either the proper length of the syllable as demanded by its position as a member of the spondee, or the customary accentuation of the word in conversation. There is no hesitation and should be none. We at once give up the sound of the sense, and the rhythm is imperfect. For this instance, it is very slightly so. Not one person in 10,000 could by ear detect the inaccuracy, but the perfection of verse as regards melody consists, it is never demanding of any such sacrifice as is here demanded. The rhythmical must agree thoroughly with the reader's flow. This perfection has in no instance been attained, but is unquestionably attainable. Smile on much that a dactyl is incorrect, because such, from the character of the 2 consonants, chi cannot easily be enunciated in the ordinary time of a short syllable, which its position declares that it is. Almost every reader will be able to appreciate the slight difficulty here, and yet the error is by no means so important as that of the and in the spondee. By dexterity we may pronounce such in the true time, but the attempt to remedy the rhythmical deficiency of the and by drawing it out and merely aggravates the offense against natural enunciation by directing attention to the offense. My main object, however, in quoting these lines is to show that, in spite of the prosodies, the length of the line is entirely an arbitrary matter. We might divide the commencement of Byron's poem thus: know ye the land where thus, know ye the land where the cypress and thus, or thus, know ye the land where the cypress and the myrtle are, or thus, know ye the land where the cypress and the myrtle are emblems of. In short, we may give it any division we please, and the lines will be good, provided we have at least 2 feet in a line. As in mathematics, 2 units are required to form a number, so rhythm from the Greek number demands for its formation at least 2 feet. Beyond doubt, we have often seen such lies as, know ye the land where the lines of 1 foot, and our prosodies admit such, but with impropriety. For common sense would dictate that every so obvious division of a poem, as in made by a line, should include within itself all that is necessary for its own comprehension. But a line with 1 foot, we can have no appreciation of rhythm, which depends upon the equality between 2 or more pulsations. The false lines, consisting sometimes of a single caesura, which had seen to mock pedantic o's, are the course rhythmical only in connection with some other line, and it is this want of independent rhythm which adapts them to the purpose of burlesque alone. This effect is that of incongruity, the principle of mirth, and they include the blankness of prose amid the harmony of verse. My second object in quoting Byron's lines is that they of showing how absurd is often is the sight of single line from amid the body of a poem for the purpose of instancing the perfection of imperfection of the line's rhythm. So we will see by itself. We, the land where the cypress and myrtle, we might justly condemn as a defective in the final foot, which is legally only 3 instead of being equal to 4 short syllables. In the foot flowers ever, we shall find a further exemplification of the principle of the bastard iambus, bastard trochki, and quick trochki. I have been at some pains in describing these feet above. All the prosodies on earth on English verse would insist upon making an elision in flowers, thus flowers, but this is nonsense. In the quick trochki, many are the occurring in Mrs. Cranch's trochaic lines. We had equalized the time of 3 syllables. Many are to that of the 1 short syllable whose position they usurp. According to one of these syllables is equal to the 3rd of the short syllable, is to say the 6th of the long. But in Byron's didactic rhythm, we have to equalize the time of 3 syllables, airs, ev, air, so that one of the long syllables whose position they usurp, or which of the same thing of the 2 short. Therefore, the value of each of the syllables, airs, ev, and air, is the 3rd of the long. We enumerate them with only half of the rapidity we employ in enunciating the 3 final syllables of the quick trochki, which later is a rare foot. The flowers ever, on the contrary, is a common of the didactic rhythm, as the bastard trochki in the trochaic, or the bastard iambus in the iambic. We may as well accent it with the curve of the crescent to the right and call it the bastard didactyl. In the bastard anapest, whose nature I know need to be at no trouble in explaining, we will of course occur now and then in an anapestic rhythm. In order to avoid any chance of the confusion which and apt to be introduced in an essay of this kind by too sudden and radical an alteration of the conventionalities to which the reader has been accustomed, I have thought to write to suggest from the accent marks of the bastard trochki, bastard iambus, etc., certain characters which, in merely varying the direction of the ordinary short accent, should imply what is the fact, and the feet themselves are now new feet in any proper sense, but simply modifications of the feet, respectively, from which they derive their names. Thus, a bastard iambus is, in its essentiality, that is to say, in its time, an iambus. The variations lie in the distribution of this line. The time, for example, accompanied by 1 short or half as long symbol in the ordinary iambus, is in the bastard spread equally over 2 syllables, which are according to the 4th of long. But this fact, the fact that of the essentiality or whole time of the foot being unchanged, is now so fully before the reader that I may venture to propose finally an accentuation which shall answer the real purpose, that is to say, that we should be the real purpose of all accentuation, the purpose of expressing to the eye the exact relative value of every syllable employed in the verse. I have already shown the enunciation or length is the point from which we start. In other words, we begin with a long syllable. Thus, when we are units, and there will be no need of accentuating it at all. And an unaccentuated syllable in the system of accentuation is to be regarded always as a long syllable. Thus, a spondee would be without accent. In an iambus, the first syllable being short or the half of long should be accentuated with a small 2 placed beneath the syllable, and the last syllable being long should be unaccented, and the whole would be thus controlled. In the quick Trotsky, each of the 3 concluding syllables, being the 6th of long, should be accentuated below with a small 6, and the whole foot would be thus. Many are the quick iambuses, is not yet created, and most probably never will be, for it will be excessively useless, awkward, and liable to misconception. But as I've already shown that even the quick Trotsky is but, should it appear, must have accentuated it by conversing the quick Trotsky. The caesura, being variable in length, but always longer than long, should be accentuated above with a number expressed in the value or value of the distinctive foot of the rhythm of which it occurs. It must be observed here that I do not grant this to be the ordinary scansion. On the contrary, I never yet met the man who had the faintest comprehension of the true scanning of these lines, or of such as these, but granting this to be mode in which our prosodies would divide the feet, they would accentuate the syllables as just above. Now let any reasonable person compare the 2 modes. The first advantage seen in my mode is that of simplicity of time, labor, and ink saved. Counting the fractions of 2 accents, there even will be found only 2 6 accounts of the stanza. In the common accentuation, there are 41. But admit that all this is trifle, which is not, and let us proceed to points of importance. Does the common accentuation express the truth in particular, in general, or in any regard? Is it consistent with itself? Does any of convey either of the ignorant or of the scholar, of just a rhythm of the rhyme of the lines? Each of these questions must be answered in the negative. The crescents, most precisely similar, must be understood as expressing all of them one and the same thing, and so all prosodies must always understand them and wish them to be understood. They express indeed short, but this word has all kinds of meanings. It serves to represent the reader is left to guess when sometimes the half, sometimes the third, and sometimes the fourth, sometimes the sixth of long, while long itself in the books is left undefined and undescribed. On the other hand, the horizontal accent, it may be said, expresses sufficiently well and unvarying the syllables which are meant to be long. It does nothing of the kind. The horizontal accent is placed over the caesura, which is in the Latin prosodies. The caesura is recognized as well as over the ordinary long syllable and applies anything and everything just as a crescent, and grant that it does express the ordinary long syllable, leaving the caesura out of the question. Have I not given the identical expression of not employing any expression at all? In a word, while the prosodies with a certain number of accents express precisely nothing whatever, I, with scarcely half the number, have expressed everything which in a system of accentuation demands expression. In glancing at the mode of the lines of Mr. Cranch, it will be seen that it conveys not only the exact relation of the syllables and feet among themselves in those particular lines, but their precise value in the relation to any other existing and conceivable feet or syllables in any existing or conceivable system of rhythm. The object of what we call scansion is the distinct marking of the rhythmical flow. Scansion with accents or perpendicular lines between the feet, that is to say, scansion by the voice only is scansion to the ear only, and it is all very good in its way. The written scansion addresses the ear through the eye. In either case, the object of the distinct marking of the rhythmical, musical, or reading flow, there can be no other object, and there is none. Of course, then the scansion and the reading flow should go hand in hand. The former must agree with the latter. The former expresses the latter, and is good or bad as truly or falsely represents and expresses it. If by the written scansion or of line are not enabled to perceive any rhythm or music in the line, then either the line is unrhythmical or the scansion false. Apply all this to the English lines which we have quoted as various points in the course of this article. It will be found that the scansion exactly conveys the rhythm and thus thoroughly fulfills the only purpose for which the scansion is required. But let the scansion of the schools be applied to the Greek and Latin verse, and what result do we find? That the verse is one thing and the scansion quite another. The ancient verse read aloud and in general musical and occasionally very musical, scanned by the prosodical rules, we can, for the most part, make nothing of it whatever. In the case of the English verse, most emphatically we dwell in the divisions between the feet and the more distinct of our perception in the kind of rhythm indeed. In the case of the Greek and Latin, the more we dwell in the less distinct of this perception, we make this clear by the example. We will leave this example for tomorrow. I'm sure I bored you already. I would like to read one more poem. This is, of course, by the Bronte sisters. And I'm going to read a poem by Emily Bronte called The Outcast Mother. I've seen this dell in July shrine, as lovely as an angel's dream, above heaven's depth of blue divine, around the evening's golden beam. I've seen the purple heather bell look out by many the storm-worn stone, and oh, I know such music well, swell. Such wild notes wake these passes lone, so soft yet so intensely felt, so low yet so distinctly heard. My breath would pause, my eyes would melt, and tears would dew the green hearth sward. I'd linger in here a summer day, no care how fast the hours flew by, nor mark the sun's departing ray, smile sadly from the darkening sky. Then I might have laid me down and dreamed my sleep would gentle be, and might have left thee, darling one, and thought thy God was guarding thee. But now there is no wandering glow, no gleam to say that God is nigh, and coldly spreads the couch of snow, and harshly sounds thy lullaby. Forest of heather, dark and long, wave their brown branching arms above, and they must soothe thee with their song, and they must shield my child of love. Alas, the flakes are heavenly falling, and cover fast each guardian crest, and chilly white their shroud is palling, thy frozen limbs and freezing breast. Wake up the storm more madly wild, the mountains drift are tossed on high. Farewell, unblessed, unfriended child, I cannot bear to watch thee die. That is the end of today's lessons. We will continue on with Poe's lessons in prose and verse. If you think there's any truth and like what I'm doing here, like and subscribe, and have a nice day.